All right, so still trying to figure out this red four-wheeler. Still not working. I cleaned the carburetor up on it, put it back together. It's set to idle really high right now, and it will start occasionally, but it's got to be sitting for a long time, and then it'll only run for a little bit, which seems to me like maybe the float on the carburetor is not working correctly, and so it takes it a long time to fill up the bowl, that is. And then, once that's full, it will run for a little bit, a minute or two, and then it sputters out and dies like it's out of gas, but it's not. So what I did is, first things first, put a can of this in there, Seafoam. I've had really good luck with that in the past on small engines. And then I put some fresh gas in there as well, just to make sure. Then we're going to let it, I just started it and ran it for a little bit so that it would flush some of that Seafoam down into the carburetor, and it died. So now I'll come back out here later and start it again. So you can see the way it's ran into the hay bales here is because I had it started and backed up, and I thought it was going to work, and then it died out over here. So I had to wait a little while, and it was starting to rain. So I jumped on it and I got it to fire up and drove it in here, but it was idling real high, so when you let off the gas, it would still be going forward, and I kind of just ran into the hay bales here. So no big deal. That's why it's got bumpers and stuff on it. You can see all the lights are recessed, so it's kind of funny though. Just took off and boom, ran into the hay bales, and then it died. I was like, oh, good enough. So got it in here out of the rain a little bit. So we're going to try that fuel additive, and then if that doesn't work, I guess we'll pull the carb back off and work on it some more. Another thing that it could be is this fuel line. It didn't look bad whenever I had it apart, but if running ethanol gas in these things, I've mentioned this several times, is really hard on them, and sometimes that'll cause the inside of these fuel lines to kind of swell up and fall apart, and it could be blocked off in there somewhere and just not able to get enough gas to it. So that's another thing we could try to replace. I doubt that's it though, because it looked pretty good, and I could blow air through it, so it didn't seem clogged up whenever I had it apart. So that's what I'm currently thinking on this one. Carburetor problems. Kind of disappointing that this four-wheeler, I like it better. This one's four-wheel drive. The Suzuki there is not, and this one's a little bit bigger, and it's got this convenient ball on the back of it that I can move my little trailer around with over here, and that'd be nice to be able to use that. Yeah, so hopefully I can get this working. Otherwise, kind of disappointed. Spent money on it and it doesn't work. So anyway, we'll keep messing with it. We'll get her going. So the other thing on this red four-wheeler, the last time you guys saw it was when I was out watching 31's calf get born, and it died on me out there, and it was having some sort of an electrical problem, and that turned out to just be a fuse. Kind of a cool story behind that though. The fuse that I got it from my dad. I happened to mention when I was at his house for something Christmas maybe, I'd mentioned that I had a fuse that was out and I didn't have any on hand. It's the glass one with the metal caps on the end. He said, well, let's go look around out here and see what I got. And he had one, and that was pretty close to the right size. I think the original one was a 15 amp and we put a 20 amp in it, so no big deal, that'll work. But what's cool about that though is that when I may have been born, or maybe not, but about 25 to 30 years ago, my dad had a problem with a rototiller, and he was talking to his grandpa, my great-grandpa, who's passed away since about 10 years ago, and he said, I've got this problem with this rototiller. It used to run, but now it doesn't. And he said, well, it sounds like there's a shear key in here I think it was for like a timing gear or something. He said, sounds like that's broke. He said, well, come out here. So that he went out and he looked around. He said, here's a couple different size shear keys. And he says, I doubt that thing's got a fuse in it, but here's some of these. Said these things are handy to have around. And so he loaded them up with a whole box of stuff, and he was right. It was a shear key. And then my dad put the rest of all that stuff in a box, and he's had it ever since. So 30 years later, one of those fuses that my great-grandpa gave my dad and told him, keep these around because they come in handy. He kept it around, it came in handy, and it's now in this red four-wheeler. So kind of cool. like I said, about 10 years from the grave, great grandpa gave me a part for my four-wheeler. Didn't even know it. So I wish he was still around. I know that'd put a smile on his face. But for those of you watching that knew him, you'll get a kick out of that story, I think. So kind of cool.